As the elected Attorney General of California,
She put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana.
and I am proud of that work.
She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California.
And I am proud of that work.
Innocent people, you actually blocked evidence from being revealed that would have freed them.
And I am proud of that work.
And the people who suffered under your reign as prosecutor, you owe them an apology.
It's the Faithless Logician, dropping what's been missing, coming for the jugular, but not let me catch you slipping. No tool needed other than my mind to dissect these delusions and correct them in real time. The slayer of dogma and baseless assertions don't come with that weak shit or you'll soon need a surgeon. But it's too late for your argument, it's been torn and shred. There is no coming back, it is completely dead. All I need is my brain and my pen to use as I see fit to flay and or mend these inexcusable policies that are impossible to defend. All I need is my brain and my pen. No trust needed, just take a second and listen as I redirect and clear your clouded attention to focus on the facts, evidence, and testable predictions, painting a picture to help explain these insights, hypotheses, and suspect claims, giving you the tools needed to separate the truth from the false and the utterly inane. The marks are legion and too many to name, but they all love money, bathing in it with no shame, while the rest of us fight over their scraps, struggling just to maintain. They've never read a war that they would not fund, yet they treat citizens asking for health care as low-life scum. But we're done asking, so get ready, because here the we come. The second night of the Democratic debate consisted mainly of using Morning Joe Biden as a punching bag, and rightfully so. This is the author of the crime bill we're talking about here, who voted for the Iraq War, the Patriot Act, DOMA, Defense of Marriage Act, and was responsible for the disgraceful handling of Anita Hill, just to name a few of his stellar accomplishments.
Under our plan, we will ensure that everyone has access to health care. Your plan, by contrast, leaves out almost 10 million Americans. For a Democrat to be running for president with a plan that does not cover everyone, I think is without excuse.
$30 trillion has to ultimately be paid. And I don't know what math you do in New York. I don't know what math you do anywhere in California, but I tell you, that's a lot of money.
Mr. Vice President, you can't have it both ways. You invoke President Obama more than anybody in this campaign. You can't do it when it's convenient and then dodge it when it's not. There's a saying in my community, you're dipping into the Kool-Aid and you don't even know the flavor.
What did you mean when you said, when a woman works outside the home, it's resulting in, quote, the deterioration of family?
No,
and that we are avoiding, these are quotes, it was the title of the op-ed.
The most impactful blows landed were on the topic of immigration. Barack Obama, also known to the Latino community as the deporter-in-chief, was responsible for more deportations than any president in history, over 3 million during his presidency, which is more than Trump if he keeps up his pace.
In the first 2 years of the Obama administration, nearly 800,000 immigrants were deported, far more than during President Trump's first 2 years. Would the higher deportation rates resume if you're president?
Absolutely not, number one. Number two, everything landed on the president's desperate locus. I found that the secretary, we sat together in many meetings. I never heard him talk about any of this when he was the secretary.
Please be respectful. Please be respectful in the crowd. Please continue, Mr. Vice President.
The fact is,
Vice President Biden, I didn't hear your response when the issue came up of all those deportations. You were Vice President of the United States. I didn't hear whether you tried to stop them or not, using your power, your influence in the White House. Did you think it was a good idea, or do you think it was something that needed to be stopped?
the president came along, and he's the guy that came up with the idea, first time ever, of dealing with the Dreamers. He put that in the law. He talked about a comprehensive plan, which he laid before the Congress, saying that we should find a pathway to citizenship for people. He said we should up the number of people that we're able to bring into this country. Lastly, he also pointed out that we should go to the source of the problem and fix it where people were leaving in the first place. So to compare him to Donald Trump, I think is absolutely bizarre.
But I don't hear an answer from the Vice President. I'm confused. I asked the Vice President point blank, did he use his power to stop those deportations? He went right around the question. Mr. Vice President, you want to be President of the United States, you need to be able to answer the tough questions. I guarantee you, if you're debating Donald Trump, he's not going to let you off the hook. So did you say those deportations were a good idea? Or did you go to the president and say, this is a mistake, we shouldn't do it? Which one?
I was vice president. I am not the president. I keep my recommendation to him in private. Unlike you, I expect you would go ahead and say whatever was said privately with him. That's not what I do. What I do say to you is he moved to fundamentally change the system. That's what he did. That's what he did. But much more has to be done. Much more has to be done.
I still don't hear an answer.
Senator Booker.
Even though Biden did his best to duck and weave the question, the moderators and other candidates actually did a pretty good job of holding his feet to the fire. I just wish I could say the same when it came to Kamala Harris and her abysmal record.
I want to bring the conversation back to the broken criminal justice system that is disproportionately negatively impacting black and brown people all across this country today. Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Senator Harris, your response.
As the elected Attorney General of California, I did the work of significantly reforming the criminal justice system of a state of 40 million people, which became a national model for the work that needs to be done. And I am proud of that work. And I am proud of making a decision to not just give fancy speeches or be in a legislative body and give speeches on the floor, but actually doing the work of being in the position to use the power that I had to reform a system that is badly in need of reform. That is why we created initiatives that were about reentering former offenders and getting them counseling. It is why, and because I know that criminal justice system is so broken, that I am an advocate for what we need to do to not only decriminalize, but legalize marijuana in the United States.
I want to bring Congresswoman Gabbard back in. Your response,
The bottom line is, Senator Harris, when you are in a position to make a difference and an impact in these people's lives, you did not, and worse yet, in the case of those who were on death row, innocent people, you actually blocked evidence from being revealed that would have freed them until you were forced to do so. There is no excuse for that, and the people who suffered under your reign as prosecutor, you owe them an apology.
Senator Harris.
That was a good job, but Tulsi didn't have nearly enough time to go through all of Kamala's abysmal record as a prosecutor. She's also infamous for imprisoning parents of truant children, mocking activists demanding more money in schools rather than our criminal justice system, blocking an innocent man on death row for being released based on a technicality, as Tulsi alluded to. And arguably worst of all, she failed to prosecute Steve Mnuchin, even after her own office came to her with more evidence than they knew what to do with. But she just told them to sit on it, which I'm sure is completely unrelated to Kamala being the only Democrat to receive donations from Mnuchin during the 2016 campaign cycle. While Steve was head of West One Bank, he oversaw the foreclosure of 36,000 home loans, nearly half of which were reverse mortgages. Typically taken out by retirees, these loans only make up 17% of the market. So West One Bank, under Steve Mnuchin's leadership, went out of their way to target the elderly in order to increase their profits. Yet Kamala nor anyone in the mainstream media seemed too concerned with exploring these issues any further. Instead, they're intent on drumming up the same old impotent talking points they've been hurling at Tulsi for the past 3 years. Ever since she dared to take a principled stance and leave her comfortable position as vice chair of the DNC, once she realized they were nothing but an arm of the Hillary Clinton campaign out to undermine Sanders and anyone else who dared to get in the Queen's way.
So who's in right now? So we have Kamala, Kirsten
Tulsi
Gillibrand. Oh, monstrous.
Monstrous?
Ideas.
Well, when she was 22, she had...
No, she's an Assad toady.
What does that mean?
You think Assad is our enemy? Assad is not the enemy of the United States because the Syria pose a direct threat to the United States.
Toady, definition of toadies. A person who flatters or defers to others for self-serving reasons.
A sycophant.
So she's an Assad sycophant. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's known about her.
Like, what did she say that
we have to look.
Her?
I don't remember the details.
We probably should say that before we say that about her.
And so I did expect that I might take hits tonight. But, you know, listen, I think that this coming from someone who has been an apologist for an individual, Assad, who has murdered the people of his country like cockroaches. She who has embraced and been an apologist for him in a way that she refuses to call him a war criminal. I can only take what she says in her opinion so seriously. And so I'm prepared to move on.
Going back to Assad, Assad is not an enemy. Is he an adversary of the United States?
We have to look to who poses a threat to the United States and the American
I understand that, but there are a lot of people who don't pose a direct military threat to the United States who consider themselves to be adversaries of the United States. Vladimir Putin poses or considers America to be an enemy. We consider Russia to be an adversary. I'm just asking you, do you consider Assad to be an adversary of the United States?
I think she's like the motherlode of bad ideas.
Whoa.
I'm pretty positive about that, especially on Assad, but maybe I'm wrong.
What would you say he is to the United States? If you cannot say that he's an adversary or an enemy, what is Assad to the U.S.? What is the word?
You can describe it however you want to describe it.
I want to know how you describe it.
My point is that whether it is Syria or any of these other countries, we need to look at how their interests are counter to or aligned with ours.
My understanding is you know how I feel about your stance on foreign policy, and when I hear the name Tulsi Gabbard, I think of an Assad apologist. I think of someone who comes back to the United States and is spouting propaganda from Syria. You have said that the Syrian President Assad is not the enemy of the United States, yet he's used chemical weapons against his own people 300 times. That was a red line with President Obama. That is not our enemy. 13 million Syrians have been displaced. So when you say regime change is hurtful for the country, but gassing children isn't more hurtful, it's hard for me to understand where you come from a humanitarian standpoint if you were to become president.
Well, you're putting words in my mouth that I've never said.
You did not say that Syrian President Assad is not the enemy of the United States. Say it now, clarify.
The issue here is how can we help alleviate the suffering of people?
Just really one moment. Is he an enemy of the United States?
An enemy of the United States is someone who threatens our safety and our security. There is no disputing the fact that Bashar al-Assad in Syria is a brutal dictator. There is no disputing the fact that he has used chemical weapons and other weapons against his people. There are other terrorist groups in Syria who have used similar chemical weapons and other weapons of terror against the people of Syria. This is an unfortunate thing that wrenches at every one of our hearts. This is not something I'm disputing, nor am I apologizing or defending these actions. My point is that the reality we are facing here is that since the United States started waging a covert regime change war in Syria, starting in 2011, the lives of the Syrian people have not been improved. Their well-being has not gotten to a better place. Their suffering has not decreased. It has increased, in addition to the fact that Al-Qaeda is stronger in Syria today than ever before. So not only are we dealing with the fact that this regime change war we've been waging in Syria has not helped the Syrian people, it has made their lives worse off.
Bashar
It has also undermined our national security, leaving us in a place where Al-Qaeda is a stronger threat there than they ever have been before. And Iran has greater influence in Syria than ever before.
Benghazi, Benghazi, Benghazi. Russia, Russia, Russia. Assad apologist, Assad apologist, Assad apologist. That's all I heard. Just another bogus conspiracy trumpeted to the nth degree by disingenuous actors and downright dimwits. Tulsi was in the Middle East on a fact-finding mission with other politicians to get a better idea on the situation in Syria and see if there was any reason whatsoever for us to be involved, mainly because they were suspect of the reports coming out of the U.S. intelligence community. You know, the ones who claimed Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction and more recently shamelessly touted a baseless conspiracy for over 3 years that our president was a treasonous foreign agent loyal to another country. While she was there, she received an invitation to meet with Assad, so she took the meeting. That's it. One meeting that wasn't even planned in advance, and somehow this makes her a monstrous sycophant. And here's the sickening cherry on top. There have been at least 3 questionable accusations of Assad using chemical attacks against his own people. The weird thing is they always seem to occur when Bashar is about to win, seemingly sabotaging his own victory by doing the one thing he should know will certainly bring the American wrath upon him, almost like some cheesy Looney Tunes villain. This is precisely why I do not trust the mainstream media, and neither should you. The last clip I want to show you is from a couple days ago, the day after the second night of the second debate, I believe, months after the truth about the chemical attack in question came to light. Yet the narrative stays the same.
Look, you know, I want to break this down to what we're talking about. I want to break this down to what we're talking about here today, because you're talking about a meeting that took place, what, 3 years ago?
Well, Congresswoman,
and every time I come back, every time I come back here on MSNBC, you guys talk to me about these issues. It sounds like these are talking points that Kamala Harris and her campaign are feeding you because she's refusing to address the questions that were posed to her.
Congresswoman, it's important, I think, for the American people to have context about your foreign policy issues and where you stand. If you're leading with foreign policy and you're running for the President of the United States, a meeting with Bashar al-Assad, which I'm sure you understand, is a very controversial meeting to take. Hence the reason why, when you come on MSNBC, it is important for us to talk to you about that. And, of course, every anchor has a different perspective and different questions to ask of you.
Every single time for 3 years. This is where the propaganda comes in, because I've talked about this a lot for the last 3 years, and I've talked about how, as a soldier, I served in a field medical unit in Iraq, where every single day I saw the very high human cost of war. Every single day, the first thing that I did was go through a list, name by name, of every single American casualty and injury that had occurred the day before. So I will not apologize to you or to anyone for doing all that. Let me finish. For doing all that I can to prevent our country from continuing to make these perpetual wrong decisions that have taken a toll on the lives of my brothers and sisters in uniform. I will continue to do all that I can to make sure that we end these wasteful regime change wars that have taken such a toll on all of us and that have made our country less safe. And if that means having a meeting with a dictator, if that means trying to meet with Kim Jong-un in North Korea to de-escalate tensions and remove this nuclear threat from our country and our people, whatever the crisis is, we've got to have a leader with the courage to do the right thing for the American people, putting their interests ahead of everything else. That is what I'm focused on. And that's what's at the center of my foreign policy and the leadership that I'll bring as president.
The truth is, we back over 70% of the world's dictators. 2 of our closest allies, Saudi Arabia and Israel, are 2 of the biggest human rights violators on the planet. We have nearly 1,000 known military bases in over 70 countries. We are the world's largest penal colony. 22 vets a day commit suicide. There's at least one mass shooting a day. Half the country's hooked on opiates and fentanyl. We have a for-profit healthcare system designed to thrive off our misery. Our aging infrastructure is falling to pieces all around us. Our water is poison. 80% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. 50% of wage earners make less than $50,000 a year. We're in the middle of our planet's 6th great mass extinction. And last but certainly not least, climate change. This past July was the hottest month ever recorded in human history. We do not have the luxury to play these petty political ploys with each other. This isn't a game. This isn't a reality show. It's time for us to grow the fuck up and act like adults. And as far as I can tell, our best options are Bernie Sanders and Tulsi Gabbard. Bernie's strength is domestic policy, and Tulsi's is foreign. I'm not saying they're perfect by any means, but I do believe they give us our best shot at survival. What up, bitches? Hope you enjoyed yourself, and more importantly, I hope you learned something. This took longer than anticipated, but I'm still new at this, so my upload schedule should hopefully improve. Let me know what you think, if you agree or disagree, if I missed something or got it wrong. Remember, I'm Jay Snow. I know nothing, so be sure to do your own research. Jana.